Hello and welcome to the January subscription tasting video. It's a new year. Happy New Year, everyone. And we are going to taste 3 very nice coffees today. And for those of you who don't know what a coffee subscription is, you probably already know because you're watching this video. But if you want to subscribe to our coffee, you can go to our website. You can subscribe to 3, from 1 to 6 bags. And we normally send out 3 different coffees. We send all the coffees on the first Wednesday of the month. And I normally choose which coffees we send out. Sometimes it's something rare, sometimes it's from our standard stock. But we try to make sure that all our subscribers get something nice to taste and also some new coffees they might have not tasted before and some challenging coffees every now and then. And I try to also kind of keep it a little bit educational. January is a new year, and that means also a lot of new subscribers because we do have a lot of people who give gift cards and gift subscriptions to their friends and family over Christmas. And that means a lot of you are new to this concept. So what we do in this video is to taste the 3 coffees that we're sending out. And if you're subscribing to, let's say, 5 bags, it means you get 1 of this coffee, 1 of that coffee, 1 of that coffee, and then another bag of this and another bag of that. And that's kind of how it works. A coffee subscription is also something that you can pause and stop at any time. And we do ship around the world. So if you live in the US, for instance, we have a lot of subscribers there. And also in Norway, of course, where we are based, we sell a lot of coffees to Norway. So that's how it works. Cool, let's get into it. It's a new year, a new beginning. And it's a great way to start the year, for me at least, to taste something refreshing and juicy and nice. And that means we're sending out a coffee from Kenya, from a small farmer group called Warenew, or We Are New. Depends on who you ask, but it's spelled Warenew, and they normally say We Are New. And it's a group of farmers that kind of broke out of the cooperative model and created their own company and have built their own wet mill, and they supply that wet mill with coffee cherries, where they process and sell the coffees. What's kind of unique about the farmers in this group is that they have been trained by an agronomist called James Kariuki. And he has kind of reinvented, I wouldn't say invented because this is techniques that have been done in Kenya for a while, but has kind of, revolutionized the way coffee is grown yet another time by making techniques that make the trees produce a lot of cherries. And I've seen the trees that they are growing. It's normally SL28 that they prefer to grow, but there's also some Ruiru 11. And the way they grow the trees makes them produce a lot of cherries. We counted up to 100 kilos of cherries in one tree, believe it or not. People don't believe that, but if you count the cherries on each branch and you average out the weight, we were actually up to 100 kilos per tree. So that's pretty amazing, especially when the average is 4 kilos per tree in Kenya. That means the farmer can have the same amount of trees, but produce a lot more coffee. The way they do this is actually something that I've adapted on my own farm in Colombia. They start by digging huge holes for the trees when they plant the trees. And that means 1 meter wide and 60 centimeters and or as deep as you can, basically. And then you fill those holes with manure, with pasture, with wood chips, with compost, whatever you can find. And then you plant the tree in that holes, and that means the roots are able to grow a lot faster and develop. And the tree, even if you have drought, the tree is able to access some water and is producing very, very well. So I did this on my farm, and after 2 years, the trees were already producing very well. And after 3 years, the trees were taller than me. So it's a technique that at least I have had success with, and these farmers have a lot of success with. Now, these farms are located around Embu, which is not the kind of normal area we buy in. We normally buy around Nyeri. We've also been buying in the west of Kenya, in Mount Elgon. But it doesn't mean they don't have good coffees in Embu. It's just maybe buyers didn't go there before, or, who knows what, for whatever reason. I find these coffees to be a little bit different than the Karagoto and Kagere and the Kiahia that we sent out last month, but still very delicious in a little bit different way. So let's taste it. Wow, and I have to say, probably this year, the coffee is a little bit better than it has been in the past. In the past, the coffee has been a little bit more kind of herbal, probably because some of the farmers have lower altitude and are growing Ruiro 11, which is a hybrid that in some cases can give you a little bit more herbal tastes. Other times the Ruiro 11 can also taste very fruity and nice, so it really depends on where it's grown. But this year, for me, this coffee has a little bit of the kind of florality that you can get in Kenyan coffees. That is not the same florality as in Ethiopia, where it's more of a jasmine kind of thing. For me, the Kenyan coffees are more of a kind of rose hips, Jamaica flower, kind of rose petals sometimes. And still we have this kind of blackcurrant, blackberry kind of underlying fruity notes that are always there. And for me, it tastes much riper this year and also very soft. So soft meaning it's very juicy, the acidity is there, but it's not kind of dominating the flavors. It's kind of more integrated, and you have this kind of ripe, juicy, fruity flavors that gives you a kind of soft sensation in the mouth. So the first coffee we're sending out from Warenew group in Embu in Kenya. And big shout out to those farmers and James, because they taught me how to grow coffee in Colombia. I really appreciate it, and I hope to be back very soon to be able to visit these farmers again. Because I think they're doing a fantastic job, and I've been following this coffee for a few years now, and I think the coffee is getting better and better. So that's a good thing. Now, not all of our subscribers love, high acidity Kenyan fruity coffees. There are also some people who enjoy more of the kind of chocolatey coffees, the more traditional tasting coffees. So because this is January and we have a lot of new subscribers, we thought we would show a little bit of the kind of diversity of the flavors that we are able to offer and that we buy. So the second coffee we're sending out is from our very good friends in Honduras, the Caballero family, Marisabel and Moises. Hello, hello. They are producing a traditional cultivar called Catuaí, which is actually from Brazil. And it has a lot of these kind of Brazilian flavors for me. That means a lot of chocolate, roasted nuts, dried fruits, these kind of flavors. Also, the coffees from Honduras, especially from Marcala, for me, always has a little bit of kind of herbalness to them. That means also the Geisha, the Catuaí, the Batiam, the SL28 that they're growing at the Caballero farms tend to have this kind of slight herbal finish, which I personally don't mind at all. I think it's quite delicious and gives a little bit more complexity to the coffee. But some coffee buyers prefer, not to have that flavor at all. It's quite difficult to taste it isolated. So that means if you're only tasting that coffee alone, you will just say, oh, this coffee is sweet and chocolatey and creamy. But if you're tasting it after drinking a Kenyan coffee, the herbalness is there straight away. So that's a very fun exercise. If you're subscribing to 2 or 3 bags, make sure you taste these side by side so that you can really taste the differences in the coffee. And if you don't, then you can put any other coffee on the table so that you have something to compare with. It makes it a lot easier to taste. But let's taste the Catuaí cultivar. Cultivar meaning the type of Arabica tree that they're growing on the farm. For those of you who don't know, we call it cultivars because it's a cultivated variety. So that's the kind of correct technical term for it. A lot of people just say variety. It's more or less the same thing for us coffee people, but for botanists, oh no, it's not the same thing. Wow. What I love about the Catuaí from the Caballeros is it's kind of a go-to coffee for me. Every morning I really enjoy drinking this coffee because it's so sweet and kind of just comforting, very chocolatey. Has a really kind of firm, nice structure to it, like kind of snappy aftertaste. It lingers a lot with a kind of a bittersweet sensation, like when you have eaten a little bit darker chocolates. But it has a little bit of like kind of dried fruit flavor, kind of towards raisin and dried figs. And it's quite of a meaty coffee, I would say. It's a big body, like a rich and sweet coffee. Acidity is there, but it's not very strong. So compared to the Kenyan coffee here, you will immediately find that it's so much more acidic, whereas this Catuaí is quite low in acidity. And I'm also enhancing this by drinking from this cup actually, because this kind of gives you the impression of being very low acidity and more sweet coffee. So that's the Catuaí from the Caballeros, María Isabel and Moises. They're producing fantastic coffees in Marcala in Honduras, and are one of the pioneers in specialty coffee in Central America, I would say. María Isabel is third generation coffee grower, and Moises is actually from Guatemala, but he married María Isabel many, many years ago. They're fantastic people, very good friends of mine, and I am looking forward to visiting them in probably March next year, or this year actually, so that we can see how they produce the coffee, and I'll probably document a little bit from their farms then. Cool, the third coffee, sometimes we do this because it's fun, and we send out some geisha coffee. And this geisha is also produced from María Isabel and Moises, and it's a geisha that we are normally selling throughout the year, but we like to have a little bit of a surprise maybe in January, February, and to be nice to our subscribers who are very loyal customers, because these coffees are normally quite expensive, and that's because they're quite rare and they taste phenomenal. So people are willing to pay a lot more for these coffees. I think the geisha from María Isabel and Moises, this is from their last year's harvest actually, is probably the best geisha that they have produced. And they did win Cup of Excellence with their geisha a few years ago. But for me personally, this has been the best harvest they have had of this coffee. And I don't know why, maybe the trees are getting older and producing better, I don't know. But it just seems like the flavor intensity is much higher this year than previous years. And with flavor intensity, I mean, it's so much easier to pick out the flavors. And it's just more of it, like if you turn the volume button up a little bit. Wow, and this is, for me, it just tastes like mandarin and jasmine flowers, a little bit of orange peel. It's a very sweet coffee. Also with a little bit of that herbalness, but I don't really mind that. It has a little bit more kind of texture and body than if you're used to drinking Panamanian geisha. They're normally like quite light and elegant and delicate, like a washed Ethiopian coffee maybe. But the geisha from María Isabel and Moises for me is a little bit more kind of punchy and has a little bit more texture to it, and still has that kind of citrusy, honey-like, floral. Sometimes you can taste a little bit of hops, like beer hops. Yeah, people call it the champagne of coffee for a good reason. It is kind of sparkling and very floral and refreshing and citric, and yeah, delicious coffee. Now the geisha cultivar was kind of, it's an Ethiopian cultivar, like all coffee comes from Africa, but this is a cultivar that was taken from Ethiopia and has been later grown in Costa Rica, and then people planted it in Panama. It's a tree that's quite difficult to grow sometimes. I've tried it myself on my farm. I've struggled a little bit. It's not producing a lot. The trees are kind of hard to get up if you don't have shade. But then I think it was 2004 or 2005 when the farmers or the people who own Hacienda La Esmeralda in Panama, they decided to separate their coffees on the farm and put it into an auction, the Best of Panama auction. And they won the competition by far, and it was because it was their geisha. And that was kind of the first rediscovery of this cultivar, and they fetched prices that were record high. And I know from memory now that the most expensive geisha that's been sold has been sold for over $2,000 per pound. That means a little bit more than $4,000 per kilo. This is not like that. We pay $20 per pound for this, so that's a little bit more than $40 per kilo for the green coffee, unroasted. So just so you know the kind of price difference, the Catuaí we pay $5.50 per pound, so $11 per kilo. So that's kind of the areas we're at, and that's why we're not able to send out the geisha to all our subscribers all the time, because we are losing money on it. But it's such a nice coffee, I wanted to share it with our loyal customers and also new subscribers, so that you're able to taste this coffee. So there you have it, 3 nice coffees for the new year. The Warenew from Kenya, Catuaí from María Isabel and Moises and the Caballero family in Honduras, and also their geisha. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll probably try to get some guests on for the next videos coming up. So I hope you enjoy that as well. But if you're wondering how I brewed these coffees, I used the V60 method. You can go to our brewing guides on our webpage or on our YouTube channel to check out how we do that. It's not very complicated. When you have good coffee, just boil the water, pour it on, have a good grinder. It's not so complicated. And I actually didn't calibrate these three with different grind settings. Normally I would do that, but I just used the same grind setting and they all turned out pretty tasty actually. So don't overcomplicate coffee. It's quite easy to brew as long as you have pretty decent equipment and good tasting coffee, good tasting water with not too much calcium and bicarbonates. That's all you need. So check it out, our brewing guides on our webpage. Hope you liked the video and hope to see you next time.